Can anybody become a successful trader? Well, it depends on who you listen to as to whether or not that's possible. Certainly, though, there are a lot of lessons to be learned. Learn them, and your chances are good. Let's catch up now with Ron William from RW Advisory, who does a lot of speaking on the behavioural side of trading. And I think this interests a lot of people, because when someone has a successful trade, they get a lot of enthusiasm for what they're doing, go out, and it all falls apart because they don't have the underlying fundamentals. And you talk a lot about this. But on the other hand, those that have failure find it difficult to bounce back. What about this big debate between nature and nurture, whether you can bring a trader on or whether it's in their body and their genes to begin with?
Well, it's an age-old million-dollar question, actually best answered during the 1980s experiment, the turtle experiment, by two millionaires back then, Richard Dennis and William Eckard. Basically put it out an ad in a newspaper and asked exactly, you know, they thought they'd actually put their money where their mouth is and try and field lots of different random traders, teach them a successful strategy and see what happened. In the end, the experiment worked. It was quite
successful.
Yes, it was quite successful in the sense that they produced people like Curtis Faith, who later on published his The Way of the Turtles, and you know, it's a well-known story that later on became very popularized by kind of Hollywood movies and of course trading colleges and trading psychologists and performance coaches like myself coming to the fro. But let's look at some of that media. I mean, for example, we had Trading Places in the 1980s that was actually from the true story of the turtle experiment. Wall Street, Pursuit of Happiness. This has become really kind of in the mainstream of media and just the human psyche. Essentially, it's the combination of a proven strategy and discipline. This is what's key to a consistently successful trader. There is a flip side to this, and that's the follow-up to the point.
Well, let's take a look at that, because I'm interested in that second point, because the big question is, can anybody be a trader?
Yeah, so one of the things I like to do is to interview some of the leaders in this space, including in trade psychology. And so one of the best is Dr. Van Tharp, with over 30 years focusing on an NLP approach, so a behavioral modeling approach, which is something I've been studying in recent years. And in an interview exchange that we had about a year ago, these were the 3 points that were basically clarified. One, that his opinion, the experiment really didn't work because they had rejected something like 90% of the traders, and from the remaining few, a group of higher performing traders or turtles were chosen. Two, even out of that small selection process, the results were dispersed. So the turtles had huge differences in their results, causing some of them to say that even through thorough selection, the experiment really didn't work. And then three, the reason for all of this, in his own words, and I really wrestled with this initially because it was so true, but then it asked me to ask the question, you know, why? Not everyone can become a great trader. You can be a trader, but maybe not a great trader, in large part because of the people not being willing to change who they believe themselves to be. That's the exact kind of word-for-word verbatim statement that was given during that interview. And it's this whole question about change. It's the change factor. Because, of course, being a successful trader means trading in your existing identity for a new and more improved one.
Well, let's pick up on that and turn to this. We've seen this before with this iceberg here and the change issue.
Yes, well, I mean, it's the old Freudian iceberg problem. We've spoken about this a few times in the past on trade psychology and performance coaching, and the kind of the supercomputer aspect of our human decision-making process. So the logical reasons for being a successful trader are only the tip of the iceberg, and of course the greater part of this equation is beneath the water, and submersed under that water is the subconscious mind. So it's the beliefs and the values that are driving our logical decisions, and it's beliefs and values around trading, risk and money. So just on the right hand side, I just put in just a handwriting style, a few I am statements. The two most important words in the English language, as some psychologists will say, is I am. Whatever you say after that is exactly the life that you will lead. If you say, I am a successful trader, then you're more likely to be on track to being one, and the opposite, of course, wouldn't be so lucrative for your development. So I am a bad trader. I am fearful of risk and uncertainty and failure. That's more on the risk side. And then finally, I'm not earning enough money to trade and invest. Flip side, of course, I am a bad trader. What is your definition of a successful trader? It's really important to do that. I always advise students and traders I work with to be clear about what their goals are and how they measure success. Also, sometimes it's maybe not necessary to measure in terms of monetary terms, although that's the bottom line. Let's also measure outcomes. And so that gets us out of this kind of good or bad trading situation or assessment. The fear of risk, uncertainty, and failure is something that we all suffer from. It's part of our our survival instincts, but it is something that we need to train and practice. And let's face it, change is constant. And then finally, on the money side, if we're not managing our money, we'll never have any money to manage in the first place. So I think we need to start somewhere and also just improve our relationship with money. And just very lastly, I put there on the infographics on the right, this change issue is something that we also have outside of trading. Just think about, as we approach the new year of 2020, dieting and fitness, it's the same issue where we get stuck in this kind of old identity versus a new identity. It's being able to trade one for the other. So the real change factor really matters, not just in trading, but in all other change situations.
Okay, so what about the journey from one to another, from the nature to nurture? What is the roadmap looking like?
Yes, so in the market work I do, roadmaps are key, and their cycles are the main framework. But also in the mind part of the market-mind combo, I have this roadmap to transformation, which I've spent a lot of time to devise. And essentially, it's this idea of having a peak performance, so that final or kind of journey state that we're always attaining in the trading zone. In order to achieve that, we need to find the balance of the mind-body ecology, and ultimately that strategy in order to achieve it is through awareness. We don't know what we don't know, so it's important for us to be aware about the things that are maybe proving to be obstacles in the way so that we can overcome them and move forward and progress. Once we actually do that on a sustained basis, we can then focus on change strategies. I tend to focus on science for awareness because I think sometimes it helps with rationalization and with measuring the change. On the change side, I think we need to be doing it for at least 30 days, if not more, 30 to 90 days to actually really be sustained. And that is what then leads to the transformation factor, where we trade one identity for the second, and it's the novice trader for the intermediate to advanced trader. A big part of being aware is understanding this nature-nurture signature, which is the whole theme of our discussion. Nature is more the behavior equaling our biology. Nurture is more the environment influence. One is driven by survival instincts and trader temperament. The other one is, as I just mentioned, beliefs and values to do with trading, risk and money. Well,
let's break it down into the nature and nurture. About the nature side, first of all.
Yes, so this is one I've had troubles with for many years, where I sit mostly in an academic presentation and people say, well, the brain is how it is, and therefore your biology is your destiny. And for the most part, it's true. We can't really change our biology, but what we can do is manage it better. And computers aren't the solution either. The human potential still has much ahead of it if we can just choose to learn in this information age where there's a lot more research now showing us, demonstrating what we can do to actually try and better manage our survival instincts. So the lizard brain is what we're trying to manage. It's what triggers in a fight or flight situation, and it's always been that fear of a saber-toothed tiger in kind of ancient caveman days. Now that gets triggered in the trading metaphor through loss aversion, but actually equally intensifying is this digital information age that we're in. And so that just lower slide there showing the man hand on his head in disarray because the amount of digital information out there, but then also the information overload. Think about the presidential tweets, the Brexit debate over the weekend when the market's not open, and so much more noise and uncertainty, which is just really straining the trader mind. And for that reason, whether it's loss aversion or just information overload, it's stress. And that stress is intensifying the situation. So my suggestion here is to really be aware of our mental state, and to try and balance it out.
My inclination is then to say, well, hang on a minute, we're all very different people. In fact, I think if you listen to some of the corporate ideology, I think we break down to 4 different sort of areas, don't we?
Yeah, so this is probably where we have more potential in terms of looking at the nurture side of the trader psyche. And exactly what you said, the trader temperament, a lot of corporates are already doing this day in, day out, where they're actually using personality models. I like to refer it as temperament, and just using just one of a commonly used models, the Myers-Briggs model, which looks at these 4 areas of how we disseminate energy, information, decision, and our organizational skills. But essentially, you're either an I for introversion, E for extroversion, N for intuition, S sensing, T thinking, F feeling, J judging, or P perceiving. Now, we're any combination of 4 out of 16. It's not it's not locked into the stone. We should be using this as a home base reference and not as a jail sentence. And so this is part of the awareness side, so that we can move from awareness to then, well, how can we change or improve these attributes accordingly? The most important thing is this follow-up discussion with Dr. Tharp about what were the optimal trading temperaments. And he says out of the 90% of people in his super trader program, so that's kind of like a postgraduate trading academy, was actually NTJ, so the intuitive big picture focus. So that's something that ties in with my temperament. T thinker, that's something I'm not in line with. I'm more of a feeler, so I tend to kind of perceive things through it on the emotional side. That can be an issue because it can lead to kind of emotional decisions and cognitive biases playing in one place. And then J judging, that just gives more stronger organizational and project management skills, which can be very good for a trader. The last thing, I mean, keep in mind this is a wide generalization, and I tend to use different models, including Myers-Briggs, but just keep in mind the last point there. Whatever personality trait or temperament, it is those who are committed, willing to work on themselves, good at math as well, and statistics, simple probabilities, strategy games. All of this stuff also helps aside from the temperament side.
Okay, so we've done the nature side. How about the nurture side?
Yeah, so this is what gives us more upside potential in terms of development work. And essentially it's our beliefs and values, particularly around trading, risk and money. These are the 3 things I tend to question the traders and investors that I work with. And essentially it's all around this pyramid of belief hierarchy developed by Robert Dills from the NLP school of thought. And that's through your external beliefs, so markets tend to trend, that's an external belief. Behavioral beliefs, I trade trending markets. Capability beliefs, I can make 20% per year. Value, it's important to manage risk, that's a value, that's a fundamental value that someone might have. An identity, I'm a successful or bad trader, that's an identity that you know, the I am statement that is either empowering or disempowering. And spiritually, I can live in a graceful state from being the best that I can be, or a successful trader if we wanted to spin it that way. But essentially, there's a belief hierarchy, and so as part of the awareness first step of 3, to change and transformation, we need to use models like this to understand what is the root cause of our belief and value. And then lastly, ask yourself these 5 to 6 questions. Is this a deliberate chosen belief, or did someone give it to me? If it's not yours, then ask who gave it to me. That helps with the causation side. 2, what happens when I have that belief? So being accountable for the actual consequence, which a lot of people don't do, but it's really worth correcting that. 3, who would I be without this belief? So it's the change factor, positive reframing, understanding, you know, what would change if you were to make a different decision. 4, is this belief useful? If not, then you can usually change it with something more useful. So let's say you know, I'm not a good trader. In order to become a good trader, I need to follow my trading rules. That would be replacing it with a positive and more constructive belief. And then 5 and 6, what is the more useful belief, what I just gave? And then finally, what have you learned? It's kind of a reflection conclusion to this belief paradigm, just as a good way of documenting it in your trade journal and following that pattern.
Good. Look, Ron, we've got to leave it there, but thanks for joining us with this look at nature and nurture and whether or not you're born to be a trader or whether or not you can acquire the necessary skills. If you want to catch up with more with Ron on this, you can do so on his website, RW Advisory. Ron William there joining us with a look at some of the background to being a successful trader.